Welcome to Learn From. I'm with Bharat Avalani and Mark Schenk, who are going to enlighten us today on the importance of storytelling for business leaders. Mark, tell us a bit about, I think many times we look at CEOs and they're about to come and present and we all cringe and say, oh, not him again. What is it that makes people not want to hear many leaders who do a good job but just can't seem to communicate up on stage?
Well, it's not just up on stage either. I mean, leaders have the opportunity in a lot of formal situations, but every time they talk to somebody in the corridor, that is also an opportunity to engage, to influence, to inspire, to talk about their strategy and to highlight things that they want to see more of. So there's lots of opportunities, and storytelling is it's counterintuitive. Some people think storytelling soft, fluffy, no time for that in business, but in reality, it's one of the most powerful weapons the leader can have in their arsenal if they know how to use it.
But why is that? I mean, is there data or science that tells us that actually storytelling is more effective than throwing slides and PowerPoints and bullet points?
Well, yeah. So we've spent a long time putting together our programs. Everything is science-based. So it's based in behavioural science. So stories are between 6 and 22 times more memorable than facts or assertions or bullet points. The vast majority of strategies, for example, are not understood and remembered. And when you look at the data about employee engagement surveys, and one of the most common pieces of feedback that organisations are getting is that communication needs to be worked on. I was in Turkey just recently. I had a bunch of CEOs and I asked, do you have an employee engagement survey? Most of them put up their hand. I asked, is communication one of the issues? And all of them said it was number one or number two. And that's the same across the world. Turkey, Malaysia, Australia, US. Why is this? And we know why, and the reason is that most of what we say is ambiguous, it's not memorable, it's hard to understand, and where the audience is sitting there waiting for the CEO, most of the time it's because it's not inspiring. Anyway, story is a tool that you can add into your repertoire, and if you want to be influencing, engaging and inspiring, then you can use that.
But do you see the same thing happening in Malaysia? I mean, do CEOs in Malaysia inspire and tell stories and engage the audience, or you think this is a skill that
I struggle a bit when I need to mention Malaysian leaders. But if I were to take it in a slightly different context, I've actually worked in a company that has done brand storytelling, and this company is known as the brand steering company. And there are about 400 brands, but the brands that really do well are the brands that's got great stories. And for example, this company that I've worked for 24 years, Unilever, sells detergents. And for many years, the turnover was not that great. It was less than $1 billion, and somebody had this brilliant connection story of dirt is good. And that's where we connected the whole idea of allow children to be themselves, let not hinder their growth by not allowing them, just giving them permission to get dirty. And today, the size of the brand is more than $3 billion. So if you look at the power of engagement, the power of ideas, so if that works for a brand, which anyway, it's human, so I'm sure it's the same thing that happens with leaders. So I think we don't need to make a case, we just got to do it.
But I think we do have to make a case, right? I mean, I think a lot of CEOs, conceptually, they know, stories are memorable, stories, engage. But is there, and Mark, maybe you can help us here, is there how do you convince a CEO to say, hey, look, you need to be great storytellers, you need to really embrace this as a skill that can be learned and that must be executed and practiced on a daily basis, and you must leverage this. How would you do that? What case would you make?
The first thing I'd say is to give them an example. January last year, I was talking to one of our business partners in the Netherlands, and I was having a conversation on Skype, and his name's Ronald, and he said, my wife came home from work yesterday, her name is Anouk, and the CEO had held a town hall meeting, 300 people, 90 minutes, and he talked about what we were doing as a business. And so Ronald said, so I asked Anouk, what do you remember? And she squirmed, she sort of went, the chairs were uncomfortable. And so he pushed her and said, come on, you must remember something. He said, yes, there was something about redundancies, but I don't know who's affected. I don't know why we're doing it. I'm not sure, when they're going to happen. But he did say redundancies. That is a great example of what you should not be doing, and you can do it completely differently by telling a story. And I'll just contrast that with one of the world's biggest professional services firms, with the management consulting arm. In 2012, they could see this is an Australian arm of one of the firms. In 2012, their management consulting business was going downhill, right? Their revenues were falling, their profitability was plummeting. They had lost market share, and they had previously been rated #1 management consulting firm. Wasn't working. So they decided they needed to change. So they changed their strategy. Now, they got us in to help communicate their strategy. So we turned their strategy into a story, and then we taught the leaders how to tell that story. And each year we've updated the story. So here's what we've achieved, etc. And we've got a simple pattern to help do this. Anyway, in 2016, they are growing at 32%. Market growth is 5%. Now, obviously, storytelling isn't the only thing that they did, but they attribute a lot of their success to the fact that every staff member is completely clear on where the organisation's going, why they're going there, and what they can do to help. So back in the 1970s, we talked about strategic alignment, and that is achievable. And stories are a really good tool to do it.
And it's something learnable, right? It's something replicable. Yes. It's something, and you say there's a process to it.
Yeah, I mean, quite naturally, we see some people who are incredible at storytelling, and we think it's some sort of gift, an inherited natural trait. It's completely not that at all. It is learnable. We've spent a lot of time cracking the code, and so simple patterns that help us solve particular business problems, and it is completely learnable. You need skills, you need to change some habits, and you need to practice. So when you do those things, every leader can be a really good storyteller, no question.
And I was in November last year. I was with a group of bankers, and bankers have all those values of integrity and all that. And I actually told them the story of Tun Ismail Ali, who was the governor of the Reserve Bank of Malaysia at that time. And he told me that there was days sometimes he'd take the Star newspaper home and he'll leave $1 behind for the secretary, saying that please give it to the company fund because I'm taking the newspaper home. And it was acts like that really actually connected, because it all started about talking about values, and I said, here's the governor of the Reserve Bank. And then I went on, there was another story where he actually went to Japan for the very first time. And in those days, when people went to Japan, they bought cameras. And Tun Ismail Ali wanted to buy a camera, and he thought the camera was expensive. So he didn't buy a camera, but his colleagues did. And when he landed at Subang Airport, being a governor of the Reserve Bank, there were no customs checking. So they all walked out, and Tun Ismail Ali went to the custom officer, and he said, those 4 people who are with me, they bought cameras, please ask them to pay the duties. And so Tun Ismail Ali never told these stories, but he did remarkable things, and the things were so remarkable that others told the stories. So there are other ways of looking at it also. I think if the leaders does such good things, must make sure that it's known. The leader walks the talk, and the rest would. And I think that to me is more credible as well.
Okay, so we're going to take a short break and close out this segment, the first segment, and we'll be back with the next segment to talk a little bit about how do we actually do this. What are practical ways to become a better storyteller?